mind stating your name and what do you do in the city of Prairie View?
Wayne Charleston, served as Justice of the Peace in Waller County in my 7th year.
Okay, and do you mind just explaining, based on your observations, the history of Prairie View politics and just the different issues that residents and students have had to face?
Oh, absolutely. When you think about Waller County, all over the state and perhaps even the country, the first thing that comes to most people's mind is voting issues that have plagued this town since 1972. Really a year before that, when 18-year-olds first had the right to vote, there has been a continuing and ongoing effort to suppress college students in Prairie View. Early in the 70s, Prairie students represented almost 50% of the population. Now they represent probably 15 to 20% of the population, certainly of the voting population, and there has been an ongoing, deliberate, discriminatory attempt to suppress that student voter turnout. Prairie View, as you know, has created many leaders. And this becomes essentially a true becomes a learning ground for students to understand just what they have and how they can utilize the school. In 1991, 19 students were indicted for attempting to vote. In 1993, the minister was indicted on 71 counts of registering students to vote. 10 years after that, the local district attorney again threatened to prosecute any students who would seek to vote. All of this came on the heels of a 1979 Supreme Court ruling that came out of a lawsuit filed by Charles Cooksey, who was a white guy back in 1972, who initiated this actual battle. Anyway, the Supreme Court ruled that Prairie students absolutely had the right to vote in Waller County. That became the Roe v. Wade of student voting rights, and it has had an impact on the very fabric, political fabric of America all throughout the country. And so Prairie students, again, they have the right to vote in Waller County. They have the right to impact everything from every judicial race to every city council race to every school board race. They have overcome many barriers, and we still have a long ways to go. But Prairie has become ground zero for student voting rights, and I think that only time will tell how successful Prairie students have been in their continued endeavor to fight these barriers.
Okay, and do you mind just elaborating on the various marches you've helped organize and why you think it was so necessary to do that, and just why you think the student vote is suppressed so much in Waller County?
You know, anytime a group of people is suppressed, or anytime people are oppressed, it's important to fight back in whatever way you feel necessary. When somebody makes a comment and they're going to do something and you do nothing, that allows them and empowers them to be a little bit more abusive. In 1991, when the 19 Prairie students were indicted, 1,000 students marched to him, said they sent a strong message that you can't just do this. And so for 10 years, nothing else happened. When Oliver Kitzman threatened to prosecute students, he eventually lost his job as the criminal district attorney for making such a discriminatory threat and illegal threat. When students marched by the thousands in response to that, they sent another powerful message that you can't just continue to do that. Out of the spirit of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, every time you march, you solidify, you send the message to not only people among your own group, but to the oppressors that you will not take it lying down. And so I often think, where would we be had we never marched in 1991? Where would we be had we not marched in 04? Where would we be if we had not marched in 08? Where would we be? And I think that if you look at the statistics and Prairie voter registration rates, you will see very clearly that marching has in fact helped. Has it got us to the promised land? Has it got us where we want to be? Absolutely not. Do we have a long way to go? Absolutely. But I think that marching keeps us in the ball game, and we are moving in the right direction.
Okay, and what inspires you to partake in such measures of activism here in Prairie View?
You know, I think that whenever you see injustice, you know, there's some people who see it like it's in color, some people who see it like it's in black and white, and some people don't see it at all. And fortunately, I think that God has just gifted me or cursed me to see it in color. And it's one of those things that when I see it, you know, I can't sleep at night, I can't do anything, and I believe that God has just called me to do it. But not just at Prairie View, even when I was in Denton, Texas, when I was in Austin and other areas that I've lived, I've seemed to always attack it. But what interests me in Prairie View is that we have the energy of the students and the hope of working with students, because the hope of working with students is such that you don't know who you're impacting. And it may be 20 years before that student finally blossoms, and it may originate at Prairie View. And so one of the things that commits me to staying at Prairie View is that I might speak to 1,000 students in a year, and I never know which one of those students is going to become senator. I never know which one is going to be president. But I firmly believe that 15, 20 years down the road, that all of our labors will be fruitful, and we will realize that they have not been in vain. And so it's the youthfulness, the aggressiveness of Prairie, and the fact that this was the last plantation to free its slaves. This was the home of the last plantation to free its slaves, and I believe that this needs to be the final episode, the final chapter, so to speak, in the civil rights movement. And so that final chapter, it may be 50 years from now, but it may be done by some students who are graduating in 2009, 2006, 2007. But I believe that we're writing a chapter here in Prairie View.
Okay, and I have a few more questions. What do you think motivated the students so much to vote in this past presidential election versus any other elections, such as the local elections?
Yeah, well, let me say, people say you're crazy about numbers. I crunch numbers. I have papers all over the house, and one of the things I saw about Prairie View students is that out of 3,800 students, 3,100 voted. You're talking about roughly 84 to 85% turnout. I don't know that there's a precinct anywhere in America that had that high turnout. Anywhere in America, we're talking about 50 states, all who knows how many counties and precincts. I don't think there was a higher turnout percentage anywhere in America. I say that on record. And I think it had to do one with Barack Obama and his inspiring message. Absolutely his inspiring message. But it also had to do with the voter registration efforts of so many volunteers who came here from day one, from the first week of the semester, registering students to vote. But those are just two. The third one I would like to say has to do with the threats. It has to do with the Prairie View 19, the fact that the Prairie View 19 were arrested, and indicted, the fact that Reverend Walter Pendleton was indicted on 71 counts. It had to do with the fact that the criminal district attorney threatened criminal prosecution. All of those things created the environment so that we could go in and speak the message, so the students could understand the message. So all those people who suffered and all those people who were threatened, all of those people contributed to an atmosphere that you have today. And so I think there's a whole lot of combination of things. And the reality is that Prairie View students are registered. They did come out to vote in the last presidential election. But we should never be satisfied until no student is left behind. And so until we get 100% voter turnout, I'll probably feel like my job is not done.
Okay, and I have two more questions. What advice do you offer to the Prairie View student that's just getting started at Prairie View and that hasn't yet entered the political process?
Absolutely get registered to vote. I'm not a professor, so I can't really give any academic advice, but I would say the first time you step foot on this campus, get registered to vote, and by the time you leave here 4 years later, you'll be tired of hearing Judge Charles say it. So my first piece of advice is absolutely get registered to vote, and then the second piece of advice is when the next election comes, go and vote.
Okay, and the last question, how do you feel when you see the fruits of your labor, like when you see that something's accomplished and it's successful? For example, the different marches, I know personally, like you can look back and see the sea of people. How does it feel to see that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's exciting, but ultimately you want to see it manifested at the polls on election night when it comes time to get people out to vote. I want to make sure that when we're marching here in Prairie View, that's just the beginning, that when you go back to St. Louis and when another student goes to Brenham, Texas or Los Angeles, California, that they take that same spirit. And so if I look up one day, I'm not looking up 15 years from now and I'm looking back. As exciting as it is to see that march, I'm watching Twitter and I'm watching MySpace and CNN, and I'm wanting to see a Charli Cooksey, I'm wanting to see a Jemiah Richards, I'm wanting to see a Robert Powell doing a march somewhere where they're fighting for a local school board or they're fighting for some voting rights issue. That's when I'll say, you know what, that's cool. That's why I get so excited about Craig Watkins and what he's doing. So the marches are fine, absolutely enthusiastic, love it. It looks real good, but the real proof and the real fruit is in what happens 5-10 years later. And so and then not only that, but the students, when we have had successful marches, they didn't really have a whole lot to do